back to Growth Minds. Today we are here with Zoe Foster Blake.
Correct.
Thanks for coming here all the way from Australia.
My pleasure.
16-hour flight, right?
Yes.
Okay. Not jet lagged at all.
I'm okay. I slept well last night.
Doing a
We're
little
very
better.
used to it. Us Australians, that's nothing.
Yeah. How often do you come to LA again?
We're here like 2-3 times a year.
Okay. So this
Yeah.
is like a special occasion in many ways.
Very special.
Yeah.
We're building the brand, so it's important to give face time and be
That's
here
it.
and
That's
check
it.
out.
Well, you've got 100 other things going on. I think you've got 9 books that you've written. I'm sure you've got 3 or 4 more that are coming up with
yeah.
ideas.
No.
You've got an app. You've got a beauty brand with multiple different side brands, I guess, or sister brands
Yeah.
associated with it that we've got here. A lot of humorous ones as well. So you are really hustling to make this happen. I really appreciate that.
Choice of words. Yeah, it doesn't feel like hustling. It's just work that I love doing and enjoy doing. And the book stuff started when I was still working full time in magazines, and it was a side project. I loved writing on the weekends. Now I have children; it's a bit tricky to find the time. But the business, I didn't expect it to be this big and to grow so fast and to take up so much of my life.
When did you start it? The business itself?
So we came up with the idea in 2012 and we launched in 2014.
Gotcha.
And so 6 years it's been live.
Cool.
It's been quite the journey.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's awesome.
One of my best friends is from Melbourne, actually, in
that's right.
Australia. And he was doing like an exchange in Montreal, which is where I went to university many years back. And we were catching up and stuff. And I was like personally talking about like all the things that I'm working on. And it seems like navigating ambition and success is treated a little differently
In Australia.
Australia.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so you agree?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this isn't me being crazy.
No, not at all. So even the word hustle is like, you don't really...
That's not a thing.
Not
yeah,
a thing
yeah,
in
yeah.
Australia, no.
Hustle is like drug dealing there.
No. Like, it's funny, I just saw a friend this morning who's been living here for 2 years and she's coming home because she's so exhausted from the hustle here in LA. And
Oh, yeah.
trying to make it happen non-stop. So, I mean, of course, we're ambitious in Australia and we work hard, but I think it's just a much smaller market. And I think, there's a fair bit of luck and timing and opportunity that exists and hard work as well, that lovely intersection. But I don't feel like I'm hustling. I'm just so lucky because I get to create work that I want to do.
Right.
And people like it. I couldn't ask for more.
Yeah, and so is it, when it comes to kind of defining success, is it more that people there just prioritize more like social well-being versus financial success? Is that more important there? Like, how do you have that conversation with your friends?
That's a really good question. I think it's really dependent on the person, no matter where in the world you live. And I actually think with the global homogenization of the ideals of what success means in terms of, what kids want to be when they grow up. Like now it's just famous. I just want to be famous. And it's not even about having wealth or, having built a career or a company. It's just fame. So I think success is so different for every person. But certainly to me in Australia, it doesn't feel as much like we don't have that sort of entrepreneurial, hard-hitting, go-getting at any cost. Sure, we're entrepreneurs and there is new businesses popping up all the time and it's a really ripe country for that and it's wonderful to see it flourish. But I don't believe it comes at any cost. I think there's a real gentleness to it and it's people doing good work and finding gaps in the market, and without that barrier to entry now, because we can all have a website, and as long as you have a small warehouse and you can ship a product, you've got a business.
Sure.
It's awesome. So success is, like for me, success is being able to do what I want and still have time with my family and not feel compromised. So I feel very lucky to be able to do that. And GoTo is the kind of business where I have an amazing team and they really let me do what I do best, which is the new product stuff and the marketing and the top line stuff without being dragged down into the daily granular stuff that I did for years. And now, luckily, I've got the grown-ups to come in and help. So
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, I used to personally feel almost like self-conscious talking about, like there's this term overachiever that you would get, and
like it's a crime.
like it's like they're downplaying that, and I used to feel like I couldn't share all the things that I was doing, especially with sometimes even like people that were closest to me, just because I didn't.
And you're an American?
I'm Canadian,
Right. Maybe it's
but I grew up in Korea, so even like family-wise, they just didn't understand it, first of all, so I couldn't really even share all the things that I was doing because
Yeah.
unless you're doing like doctor stuff or like lawyer or accountant,
Yes.
it's just like it's not even in their vocabulary, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I used to feel like I used to downplay it almost, and it wasn't until I came to America where like people embrace it and people
Yeah.
love to hear what you're doing and they're passionate about it. So that's why I was just curious to know how that conversation goes with you.
You should be an honorary Australian because that is exactly how we play it. We're very self-deprecating.
Yes.
We have a thing called tall poppy syndrome, which are you familiar with?
Is that like crab in the bucket? I think it's like the same thing, no?
I don't know. Well, tall poppy's like if you get too tall, too high,
Yeah.
too far above everyone else, they'll cut you down.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Crab in the bucket is when a crab tries to climb the bucket. The crab will, with his claws try to bring him down. So it's
Yeah,
like, I think
right.
it's like an
Oh, okay.
American saying.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're not
Never
alone in
heard of
that.
Just made it up, guys.
I like it. It's good. I'm going to switch
sense
to
though,
that.
right?
Tall poppy's been done.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you and it's funny coming over here to do press and you don't, it's not instinctively we don't talk about our successes. And
Sure.
our American press agency's like, talk it up, sell yourself. But it
That's
just feels really foreign to us. So it's a different cultural thing, I believe.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
And people also struggle to, I think if you're doing too many things, like I like to make skincare and books and apps and I just like to create things. But people find it hard to pinpoint you. And even in an introduction in an interview, they're like, they don't know where to put you. And so I think people just want a label that makes sense to them and to just box it off.
Yep. Just because they don't have to think about it too
Yeah,
much, right? Especially
yeah,
if they
yeah.
haven't heard about you. Yeah. Where do you think that ambition comes from? If
Like, what do you write on your airport form? That's the thing, right? Isn't it?
In my what?
On your airport form, like, what is your occupation? You know, when you come through customs.
Oh.
Yeah. So I switch it up every time.
Yeah, you just do something different. What
Like
do you put?
CEO or writer or, whatever.
What'd you put this time?
I don't think I had it on this form, but I don't know, probably megalomaniac, something like that.
Gotcha. Well, where do you think this ambition comes from? Given that you were raised in Australia, right?
Yes.
Okay. Were you always like this as well, like in terms of how ambitious you are and how
God, it's so
maybe not
funny.
ambitious, but I think you wrote about this. You're talking about ambition versus hustling. No, it was a word that you used.
Drive, maybe?
Maybe
or-
drive. Yeah, I think it was drive.
I think they are two different things, but ambition has a bad stigma in Australia, and I don't believe it should. Because ambition is healthy, I think. But I don't know, I think I grew up in a pretty free-range childhood with no TV and lots of children, and I was bored. And a lot of what I've done has actually come from boredom. Like writing books was because I had no money and I was a journalist, and my boyfriend at the time was away a lot. So I was like, well, I can't do much else with my weekend. I'm just going to write a book. And so that prolific productivity in my late 20s was mostly from boredom. I don't have boredom anymore. I'm busy because I have a lot of things going on. So it's harder to... But I think that also, I think the one thing about having children, a lot of young women go, does your ambition leave, or do you no longer have time to do new projects, or they're worried about their relevancy after they have children? But to me, I feel like more than ever, I've been more economical and more effective in my projects, because if it's going to take me away from my kids, it has to be really worth it. So
Sure.
I only do my shit. I only do my skincare and my books. I don't take on third-party stuff. I don't have the time or the bandwidth. And if it's going to take me away from my kids, it has to be solid, a good project.
Yep. We actually just had, I don't know if you're familiar with Melody McCloskey. She's the CEO of Style Seat,
Okay.
based in SF. They're basically like marketplace for beauty appointments. But she recently had a kid about a year and a half ago, and she said the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is like this idea of Bill Gates something as well. Like if you want something done, give it to
Somewhat
a
busy mum.
person,
Yeah.
right? Or busy mom.
Yeah.
And it totally makes sense because of how
You just
effective
have
you'll
to
need
get
be.
better at time management. Like before kids, I would just piss about on the internet all day and
Yeah.
pretend I was working.
Sure.
But now my time for flow is so short that I have to work and turn off email and just get it done.
Yeah.
Otherwise it won't get done.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The problem for me, also, I don't know if you have this as well as entrepreneurs, is you just never know when to turn off, and you're
Yes.
always trying to fill the void with something just because you're so used to doing something.
Yes, I think it's bit destructive. I think it's not necessarily healthy, and I call it creative ADD, where as soon as I finish a project, I want the new one, because the newness of the project and the excitement of the project is what compels me to do it. And I'm a good finisher. I see it through. And I've probably marinated it for so long that I know it's a good one. Because I have a lot of ideas, I think we all do, but most of them are shitty. So the ones that stick are the ones that I'm going to honour. And there aren't too many of them. Like products, we get to do that all the time. We get to play with that whole process.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't even remember the question now. I've talked for so long.
Yeah, I don't
I'm sure it was excellent, though.
Yeah, we're all just kind of lost at this place.
Maybe I am jet lag.
Yeah, you can have some coffee if you want. I don't have Corona, don't worry.
That's Corona. God. Too soon.
Too soon, yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree, though. It's tough turning off, and...
Oh, yeah, that was what you were asking.
Yes.
I don't turn off. My poor team will get emails and DMs through the night going, this is great. Can we do something like this? Or just a little note just going, how about we do this?
How do you navigate that, knowing that, well, as you start to grow, at this point, you're certainly going to be more responsible for more people, not to put pressure on you, but the impacts of your decision, like you essentially have more leverage, right? So whatever decisions you make will eventually have a bigger impact on other
the culture
people.
And the team, and
How do you navigate turning off so that you can make more effective decisions, or that you can avoid burnout? Because a lot of entrepreneurs certainly go through that.
That's a good one. So first thing we did was we jumped from a small size company to medium, and that with that chasm jump, we brought in the grown-ups, I like to say. So, you know, a CEO, GM and my marketing director and a lot of very qualified, experienced people. And that has allowed me to, what I call, focus on my superpower, which is the creative and the marketing and the product-led stuff. So I feel at a point where I don't think burnout is really on the cards for me at the moment, because I've been mindful to bring in people to help. And help is so important. I'm not a good people manager. I'm not good at managing a team of 30 young people who need guidance. And so I think there are people much better suited to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I'm always curious to people who are founder CEOs, because I think they're really different skill sets. And I don't want to be CEO. I think that's a really experienced job for someone who's got great vision and business acumen. My job as the founder is to be the visionary and to drive that feeling of the company and the customer mentality, and to make sure that we're doing the right things for the customer.
Gotcha. Oh, so you're not the CEO of...
I'm a CEO. So I'm Chief Creative Officer because I wanted that title, because I'm active in the company every day, but it's a very defined role because it's the creativity and the comms and the marketing and the NPD. So no, we've got a GM, but we're not quite at CEO size yet. And I think it would be hard for me to have a CEO because there is obviously a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
But we're not big enough to really warrant that yet.
Gotcha. Well, are there things that you're doing for yourself personally to make sure that you don't avoid burnout, or to control this, like ADHD that I personally have as well?
Yeah. Well, my family time is wonderful. It's, you're still on as a parent, but I enjoy that time with my husband and my children so much, and that's my off time. My husband has a sort of creative career as well, so we don't have to leave the house at 7 and come home at 7. We're sort of always floating in and out of the day. So that time is really important. I'm not very good at self-care. I know I could be a lot better. I always do that thing of like, it'll calm down after this. It'll calm down after this. And guess what? It never does.
It's always on the horizon, right?
Yeah. And my husband rolls his eyes now because he's like, it's not going to calm down. You need to just be in the now and be more present. I think what I've realized even in the last 6 months is how introverted I really am, and how important it is for me to recharge before I come out of my shell and do press for a while.
This is tough for you right now?
This is fine right now in this moment.
Okay.
I've had a lot of coffee and I feel great. But, after a long day of being on, I think most people need to just be off for a bit.
For sure.
That's not crazy to do that. So it's just being a bit smarter about boundaries. I think boundaries are really important. I got to set boundaries with my email. Like I've got a permanent out of office on now, and things like that really help me to feel less guilty about getting back to an email like that.
Sure.
And just saying I don't work Wednesdays because that's my day with my kids, and
That's an interesting tactic. So it's always this permanent OOO out of office is always on for you.
It's really obnoxious.
Even though you're on, and then you just decide that when you...
You know what it does? It acts as the first line of defense. So any sort of mail that I don't want to, and I put like my people in there. So I'm like, if you want to talk about go-to, here's your person. If you want to talk about books, here's your person. Here's my manager. So they've got somewhere to go.
Yeah.
And if they know me, they'll just text me. But my team know I'm going to write back. Like, this doesn't mean I'm much better at email, but it just means that I feel like a sense of calm about it because no one expects me to get back to them straight away.
Sure, yeah. No, I think that's a really great tip, actually.
I want to be off email more.
Yeah.
I really do.
It's tough, though.
It's tough. It's so addictive.
Yeah. At least I personally try to not do, because they said that there's a lot of research saying that when you're the most creative, it's like the first 2 to 3 hours of when you wake up. That's like when
100%.
creative juices are flowing in your brain.
Yeah.
And for me personally, the way I've navigated it is not to do email until like noon or at least
That's
1.
really clever.
And then before you sleep as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that?
Oh, yeah. No, never before sleep. Like, I stop work at dinner time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I switched to TV. But yeah, I think that's true. And when before children, when I could wake up early and just write, that was my flow always. Like I could write so much. Like I could write 2,000-3,000 words in a couple of hours for a novel, say, or a really long blog or something. But now it's so hard with the kids because they're up and it's them. So I've lost that flow.
Do you miss like the creative part of writing as well? Because that's how you started your career initially, right?
Yeah, I really miss fiction. I always say it's like an illicit lover that I never get to hang out with. And when I do, I feel I just can't ever give it the time. So I'm about to start fiction again, and I'm going to have to set a date with myself. Like I used to set Saturday mornings from 6 till 10, and there was no Wi-Fi, no nothing. And there's no emails coming in on Saturdays, so you feel a bit safer doing that. So my husband will help me with that. I just need to lock it in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people know about you. Well, I'm sure a lot of people know about you through your writing as well, but this is certainly this new thing that you're promoting, so a lot of people think this is your main focus. But
yeah, and it is for now.
And it is.
Yeah.
For now, until the CEO comes. But I think a lot of people, I think it's interesting given like this dynamic history of other creative stuff that you've done. You started as a beauty writer, is that the right term for it?
Yeah, beauty editor in magazines. Yeah.
Yes, and then you shifted into writing fiction and nonfiction as well after
at the same time actually. So I was vlogging in the morning, I was working at like Cosmo or Harper's through the day, and then I was writing books on the weekend, and it felt amazing. Like it never felt like work, and I am very happy in that world. But you know, life changes, and I pulled out of everyday work, and I just was writing for a website that I helped create and traveling a lot more, and then I got married and pregnant and so on. But that was a really big part of my life, obviously, but in terms of work, Sure. So, I never really wanted to be in business, and I didn't ever think I would be, because books I love because it's a really solo project, and you're just by yourself, and you're writing in your soft clothes with your coffee, and it is romantic as you sound. It's wonderful. But business is almost the complete opposite of that. But the one thing that strings them together is the writing. And I always secretly wanted to be a copywriter. And I sometimes say that I created a brand just to be a copywriter with no one above me, because I'm like, I don't want to start as a junior burger in some ad agency. I want to go right to the top. I'm going to Don Dre for this. So my greatest joy is writing all the copy for the products and making them have personality and giving the consumer a fun moment to...
I love some of these. I need this, by the way.
You take that.
I saw this,
Yeah, it's great for flying and juice you right up. So one of our key points of difference is that copy and having fun where fun doesn't belong. Like on the back of a beauty product in the instructions, or on the shipper that you arrive with. And beauty is classically quite earnest and serious and instructive, and I just think it could be more fun. And Australians are known for our larrikinism. Like, it's one of our pillars.
You guys have a great sense of humor, for sure.
Yeah, we can't
even
take it too
funerals,
seriously.
it's like a celebration, right?
Yes.
That was like a revelation for
my
me.
friend does that. She was one of my beauty editor friends, and we worked together for years, and now she does funeral parties.
No way. So how does
like
that
a
work?
really joyous send-off, which I love. I think that makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that work? Like, how is that different than like a typical funeral, I guess?
I believe it's more about celebrating the person and having a joyful send-off rather than the mourning and the grieving, which is still part of it, of course, but the process doesn't need to be somber.
Right.
Yeah.
Do they just like make fun of the person that...
No. So it's like, I think you could think of it more as like, I mean, it feels a bit more alternative. You know, there'll be candles and music and, everything that person loved in life.
Sure.
Probably nature, that sort of thing. So I guess it's just that lovely disruption of a ritual that we all just held as a given. Like, that's how
Right.
you do a funeral. We
Sure.
all wear black and we are terribly upset. But guess what? You don't have to do it that way. And I
Yeah.
guess that's what we do with beauty. We're like, it doesn't have to be boring.
Right. Right.
It doesn't have to like make you feel intimidated and
Yeah.
confused.
It definitely seems different when I see the label and everything.
Yes.
Did you also start this as you were doing writing as well, like on the side?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, I'd sort of moved out of day-to-day journalism and blogging. I was focusing on books. So I wrote a beauty book that was all my best tips and tricks. And
Yeah.
that was very much the genesis of this, because I had so much feedback from women about skincare. Confused, so confused and flummoxed and intimidated. And skin is so closely tied to confidence.
Sure.
So that was a good way of going, I think there's a gap here for something that's just a lot more simple. Simplicity. It shouldn't be hard. And I love the disruption era because I just feel like these norms and these things that we've all just taken for granted, like taxis, no, there's another way to do things. It's allowed. So beauty can be fun and also very effective and clean, and, we're a clean skincare brand. So I think we're hitting all the right notes.
Yep.
And we came at the right time to have fun with people.
Yep.
Very noisy category.
It is, yeah.
You got to stand out, but you can't stand out for the sake of standing out. You have to do good shit. You have to do good work. And people will buy it once because it's funny, but they'll buy it twice because it works.
And how did you have like a plan
No.
of at all?
Sorry, go on.
Okay.
I'm terrible at
I was
planning.
talking more about life, but okay.
Yeah. No, please go on, because I almost certainly know the answer, but go on.
No. I was actually talking about the business. So you didn't really have a way to, like, did you know that writing copy and making that more engaging and humorous, did you know that was going to be positioning yourself as a different brand, or?
No, I had no idea I'd start a business. I honestly
Okay.
just thought I'd write books and maybe try screenwriting, but writing, just
Yeah.
classic writing. But I think that's the other beautiful thing about writing, is that it becomes a vessel to connect. So with all my relationship advice, because I was a relationship columnist at Cosmo for 10 years and have written 3 books on the subject.
Yeah.
It's just a way to connect with women, really. And it's these universal subjects like beauty, skin, confidence, romance, heartbreak that allow me to have this connection with people. And
Yep.
so writing is the way to do that for me. So
Gotcha.
who knows what I'll do next, but it would pivot off writing, or I would use the thing to write and connect.
Sure. Well, how did you first get this started? So you were writing, you were providing relationship advice, which we'll get back to.
Yeah.
Definitely need some help there,
I'll try my best.
as we all do.
Yes.
But so you didn't have a plan though. So you kind of had this like inclination that you wanted to do something around skincare because you were connecting with females around the world, or especially in Australia, and you realized that skincare had attachments to confidence.
Yeah.
And you wanted to be that. You wanted to build a product as a vehicle for that.
That's a very generous way to look at it, and I wouldn't necessarily agree. I think what really happened was, beauty had evolved from writing about it every day to then starting my own, being editor-in-chief of a giant website, which was basically an extension of my blog, but with money and infrastructure, and then just being a columnist for various titles. And then to consulting to brands, like in the early days, like brands were like, what's Twitter? How do we do it? And I would help them shape their brand on Twitter and social media and so on. So there becomes an obvious elevation up through when you don't want to do the daily stuff anymore. And so starting a brand probably seems obvious, but back in 2012, it wasn't really happening a lot.
Yeah.
And Instagram was fairly embryonic back then in Australia, at least. But a friend of mine who has a skincare brand sort of planted the seed, and she said, you've got a big digital loyal following, you've got Australian women trust anything you say about beauty, it would make sense. And she gave me her formulator, and that's how it literally began. No business plan, still don't have one. It's terrible. Like, the team need shape and direction, but I very much play by gut and instinct, and then I have a team to vet it with and help me, and they know when ideas are going to stick and when they suck. So
Sure.
It's great to have those guys there. But you need help. Like, it's fun to be the creative founder who just has ideas and they're so crazy and will it work? But you also need, you've got people's livelihoods at stake now, and
Right.
employees and retailers that rely on you. So it's getting a bit more serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boo.
You kind of miss the old days.
Everyone says that, like the garage days, right? We were packing our own press kits and
Yeah.
I was doing all the copy. But no, I don't want to go back there. I love having a team.
Yeah.
They're so good.
Not good for your nails, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with that transition from having a full-time job or whatever they were doing to starting their own thing. And I think people often think that they have to jump full into what they're
No.
doing. So part of the reason why I asked is because you seem to have made that transition pretty smoothly by,
I think there's that
working the weekends and stuff.
continuum where you have like your full-time work and say you've got a side hustle where it's DJing or card making, or for me it was writing. And eventually it becomes like this where you're really torn between the two, like you're working full-time and you're trying to do the weekend work and you might be getting more orders and more demand. And suddenly this starts to overtake this, and this becomes this full-time work, and this salary world becomes less important, and you realize this is the time now to make that leap, and this can really go, but it needs that mental real estate and it needs that financial and investment. So I'm like, don't leap when you're still here.
Yeah.
Wait until it's here or even here for people to be able to, sorry, I'm doing a lot of hand gestures for a podcast, but it's that thing where your side hustle becomes a challenge to your salaried full-time work. That's, I would say that's when you go.
So for you, was there like a specific metric that you needed to hit? Was it like a certain revenue amount?
No,
Like,
no.
How did you know just...
Well, I was, so the site, the beauty site, I had become just a blogger twice a week for them as like a sort of editor-in-chief at large, which meant I could travel the world and write my books, but still file twice a week. It was wonderful.
Damn, sounds like an
On a
amazing
really,
job.
yeah, and it was a great salary, and I was like, this, I think I'm done. This, I've made it. Like, this is the best. And then I realized I was going to have to give up that salary if I wanted to go into GoTo and go all in and do it properly.
Yeah.
Just to be able to, I think you need to honor your projects in that way. Like I needed to honor GoTo and go, if I'm going to put money and time and actually make a thing to touch and hold, I need to dedicate to that properly. So there was a little bit of uncertainty, and I think everyone goes through that when they leap from salaried work to not. But I had a financial, I'd been selling books for years, and I didn't feel financially insecure.
Gotcha.
It was just a confidence thing of like going out into the gig economy or starting your own business.
Yeah.
But
Did you
is
have
it
conviction
anymore? No.
that the skincare was going to be your thing? Because you could have done any product, really, right? So
Well, it kind of started because a retailer asked me to do a makeup line, and we started going down the path, and they were like, okay, so I was like, so what are we putting in these products? And they're like, you don't need to know that. Just sign here and put your name on it. And I was like, oh, no. Like, I haven't worked 10 years in the industry to just put whatever they were going to put on people's faces, like some horrible formaldehyde powder.
Yeah.
So that was sort of like a light bulb moment, going, if I was ever going to make a product and use up all my goodwill points that I'd earned over the years by being a trusted advisor to these women, it would have to be really clean and really safe and done right. So I wasn't scared for it to fail. I don't think that's a healthy mentality, and it's not my mentality. And having sold books for a lot of time, like you work for a year on a project and then they spend another 6 months editing and you put it out there, and it could suck and it could fail, but I'd had like 6 years experience of that already being in my life. So I guess to that extent, putting out a product didn't feel, and I felt kind of safe. I felt like not smug and not to be obnoxious, but I was like, I think these guys who like me and trust me will give it a go.
sure.
But if the quality's not there, they won't buy it again. So that's why we worked so hard on making it good.
Did you have any strategies in terms of testing it so that you're like, no, there's no plan at all. I keep talking about plan, there's no plan.
There's no plan. I don't know if that's good advice. And I don't know if I could even recommend it. But it has worked for us. But I do think we need to always recognize the privilege in having a situation where I had a masthead credential for magazines, and I had experience, and I had books, and I had confidence, right? I wasn't starting from scratch and no one knew me. Like I had things in place. So it's all fine and well for me to say, I had no plan, it just worked.
Yeah.
That's not helpful to everybody.
Yeah. Well, Peter Thiel also says this as well, who's the co-founder of PayPal.
Yeah, people often put us in the same sentence. Sorry,
Same people,
go on.
right?
We're always being compared.
But he does talk about this idea. I mean, lean startup is certainly important, but he kind of advocates a different way, in that a lot of it is BS, especially if you're trying to do something new. And yes, I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if that was part of your plan or anything like that, but.
What do you mean exactly?
So his whole, like, the typical advice by Eric Ries of Lean Startup is to create a systematic way to test your idea. And
which makes perfect sense, like say in tech.
in most
Yeah.
in most ideas. But if you want to do something that's truly innovative, truly disruptive, it's oftentimes not worth it to go through the lean startup because oftentimes people don't really. It's kind of like
Yeah.
Ford. Like if you wanted a faster, if someone asked for a faster way to travel, they would have asked for a faster horse or something like that. So
yeah.
it just
They don't know what they want till you give it to them.
yeah, exactly.
But we weren't reinventing the wheel. Like the skincare was very much already in existence, and I think that level of innovation, like we weren't making literally a new product. We were making a new take on an existing category that was already very successful.
Sure.
So again, it's disruptive, but in a small sense, like
Yep.
in terms of marketing and maybe formulations and packaging, but we're not reinventing the wheel.
Gotcha. Well, probably the biggest thing that helped you guys was the personal following that you had from writing.
Yeah.
So when Instagram wasn't all that around, was it mostly like an email list that you had then? That
Oh,
you
I
grew
did have a
through?
script. Yeah, well, I started blogging in 2006, which
Yeah.
is pretty primitive. And I think just by virtue of being one of the first, you get status points, right? So those original bloggers, the OG, we had a following from early days. And we may not have been the best. In fact, I definitely wasn't, but I was doing it. And so I had the reputation as being a digital person. And I was not actually very quick to Instagram. I didn't take it. I was like Twitter, I think 2008, but I didn't come onto Insta until about 2012. So before then, I often think, I'm like, how did we do anything before we had this digital billboard? Like, how do we sell this? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I guess it was like the magazines and then, book tours and Twitter, I guess, to an extent. But yeah, I had a sub list, yeah.
Gotcha. And most of your sales now, is it through Instagram then?
I would say it's our main force, yeah.
Crazy. Wow.
I think because we were D2C for 5 years, very deliberately in Australia, and we've only just gone into retail less than a year ago, and that's going very, very well. Because
Yeah.
I think for skincare, first of all, we have an excellent retailer over there, Mecca, but we have, and people want to touch it and try it. It's skincare,
Yeah.
so it made sense. And we were in Sephora here. We went big in 2018 here, and that was challenging. That was big. This is a big market,
Yeah.
and we're learning. So I can't remember the question.
yeah. Well, we're talking about your initial sales strategy.
Oh right, yeah.
But I
Instagram
imagine
is
it's
huge.
through Instagram. A lot of it is through the advice that you've
Yes.
given in terms of relationships and stuff.
Yeah, so
back
I
in the
think
day.
we have the jewel of like the brand go to Instagram and then my own as
Yeah.
like the founder and the influencer for the brand. But our retailers are now starting to do some of the heavy lifting for us there as well.
Cool.
But we believe in education and skincare, like hand holding and taking them through it, making them feel confident
Gotcha.
about it. But Instagram's amazing.
Yep.
It's brilliant for us.
Definitely. So in your previous life, as I mentioned, you were a columnist and you were providing a lot of relationship advice. I think
Yeah.
one of the advice that I was reading that you shared was this idea of instead of looking through outside of your circle and trying to aim for physical attraction first,
Yes.
look around your friend circle first because it's a lot easier to, maybe not a lot easier, but at least you know that you're compatible,
Yeah.
whether it's emotionally or through values, and then you can find the physical attraction first.
Second.
Second,
Yeah.
sorry. Do you still believe that?
Well, the caveat is I married one of my best friends, so that's probably why I say that. But
Yeah.
I feel like it does seem like common sense to me to go, well, if you look around at people that you already admire and respect and love and you are very comfortable and happy to spend time with, that seems like a good team for, a good basis for a relationship. But so often it happens that you start with the physical
Yeah.
or the vaguely cerebral, and then you try and work out if you admire each other and your values align
Yeah.
later. And that's not to say that's the wrong way, and that's the normal way, I think.
Why do you think that is, though, instead of the other way around? Because
It's just
it
the
makes
nature of
sense what you're
dating.
saying.
I know, but sometimes you're just not physically attracted to your friends.
Yes.
And you love them for different reasons, and you can be in love with your friends, female or male, for a lot of different reasons, but you don't want to have sex with them or marry them.
Yeah.
So I think, the question was, even with my own husband, was could we turn this into something physical, or is it too far gone? Like, is he gone into brother mode, like friend zone forever? Absolutely not the case. But I've heard, quite a few stories where this happens, where a friendship blossoms into something more. But to me, that just makes sense. You got to wake up to this, especially when you have young children. Like,
Yes.
never are you going to hate each other more than when there's a screaming child keeping you up all night and you're just so fatigued and exhausted.
Yeah.
So to be with someone who makes you laugh and who you really, really like is going to help.
Yeah, I think so. In an ideal world, I just don't know. I mean, I've heard of these cases like this where
It's probably not the norm.
Yeah, but I mean, I've heard of cases where you start out as friends and you weren't physically attracted to them before, but then afterwards you started to become more physically attracted to them.
I think brains fall in love. That's the key.
You think that's what it is?
I do.
You think that's more girls though? I can't, because I can't speak for girls.
Oh.
As guys, I don't know. Does
I
that
can't
happen
speak for
ever?
guys.
Does that happen to you guys ever? Yes, I don't know. Like,
Sorry, so you're saying that if you're friends, that's it? Like it doesn't morph into a sexual attraction?
Well, my girlfriend now is, we were friends first. And
There you go.
oh, okay. So it does
Oh,
happen.
it's saying the opposite. Okay,
Okay.
go. Yeah, so it's a friend and yeah.
Interesting. So just be.
So
Thanks,
they're
guys.
on my team. That's good. Yeah.
Well, because I've heard that in terms of, at least girls, when they see guys, within like the first 5 to 10 seconds whether you're going to be physically attracted to them or not,
Yes.
right?
But I
So-
think that's our reptilian biological brain coming forward. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's our smart brain.
I totally agree, but that's
Yeah.
generally how.
Of course,
works,
that can
right?
happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just kind of like flip it around, you fall in love with their brains.
No, that takes time. If you look at any captive environment, they always end up falling in love eventually. Like we've all seen the movies or Big Brother. It's that idea of getting to know someone in full and this is maybe controversial, but the idea of withdrawal is often a key motivator. So one of my other key pieces of advice is if you're on the edge or you're on the fence about someone, or you're taking them for granted, or they're taking you for granted, I do what you call, like, you freeze them out for a while. But you tell them, this is not head games. This is you saying, I think I need a bit of space I'm confused. The absence will give you the answer that you need for both parties. You'll miss
Gotcha.
them, or they'll contact you, or they won't. And you've got your answer either way.
Yep.
So I'm like, don't keep, like, people just stay in this hookup culture and Tinder culture of just putting up with shitty behavior because it's the norm now. And I understand it must be really hard, and I can't speak from experience to try and change the norms of what's going on.
Sure.
But the idea of the self-worth and the self-respect of going, I can't put up with this forever.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just addicted to new experiences, new
Yeah.
adventure, because our kind of benchmark for having this level of dopamine in our brains is so much higher because of just being accustomed to social
Addictive,
media,
yes.
the red notifications. So I think it certainly transfers over to dating.
It's horrible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's tough.
And I think people are addicted to like the mystery of it almost, like not knowing, which is why I go back to this idea of, I don't know, people just fall in love with people that, like, maybe it's more infatuation, I guess, right? But yeah, I don't know how sustainable it is.
No.
Personally.
I don't
yeah.
know how sustainable either is. But yeah, it would be tough to be single in this new culture. I don't think anyone's navigating it. I don't think they know how to.
Yeah,
It's never
especially
been
with
this way.
apps and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have friends that are on the apps?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm nearly 40, so all my friends are second rounding. They've divorced and they're coming through again. And on one hand, this is like, there's like all this platitudes are cut. Like, it's like, you want in? Great, let's do it. But there's also the confusion and the heartbreak of just being ghosted constantly or people not writing back because there's a better option. And
Yeah.
that would be really
is that
tough.
a thing in Australia?
Of course
I thought
it
that
is,
was like
yeah.
an LA, New York
Oh,
thing.
no.
being ghosted.
I don't think it's as tough here.
Okay.
I mean, sorry, as tough in Australia.
Okay.
I think we're not really that multi-dating culture.
Yeah.
But maybe we are now. I'm not single. Maybe it's come a bit more hardcore.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I just don't know. Because have you heard of this thing called Dunbar's number? It was like a German, I think, evolutionist that his name was Dunbar, but his whole thing was that back in the day, we all used to live in tribes.
Yeah.
And this idea of like meeting new people was just so foreign because every time you meet someone new, you're actually in physical danger of your tribe.
Yeah, right.
So that number that they came down to was that your tribe tended to be anywhere from like 150 or lower, which means that our brains are like 2 million years old. So the amount of people that we can keep track amongst our network is around 150. Anything more. So if you look at companies that are like 200 or 300,
Yes.
you guys are 30, which is still great.
Yes.
Anything more than that, you just start to forget the name of the
Yeah.
people that are around you
Yes.
because it's just not our brains are wired like that.
Yeah.
But now you have social media with people that have like 2,000 friends on Facebook.
Yeah.
Half of them you don't recognize.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know how sustainable it is in terms of
No.
having this kind of lifestyle, especially as a single person.
We
for
are
sure.
crippled with choice.
Yeah.
This is the paralysis that comes when you go beyond your, because it used to be you'd marry someone in your street and then it was in your suburb and then phones came in and I can't remember who wrote about it. It might have been Aziz Ansari and he wrote it.
Yeah, you might have. Yeah.
But now you can fall in love with someone from Denmark who you've never met in real
Yep.
life. And the I don't think more options is better
Yeah.
necessarily. Like even choosing a show to watch. That's why we're all watching Friends and Seinfeld again, because we can't make a decision. We
Yeah.
have too many options.
I'm so disappointed it's going away on Netflix, though. Oh, man.
Rest in peace.
But yeah, you go for the safe choices for sure.
Yeah, you do.
I think the other confusing part, I don't know if this was happening around when you were providing advice, is speaking of Aziz Ansari, he recently had this whole like scandal about, people say it was a bad first date, some people say it was like sexual allegations, but it's a very confusing time for men and women to figure out how to properly act amongst each other.
Yes.
So that introduces like a second hurdle that just never really, well, it always existed, but it's just so in front of our faces these days that I think it's confusing for a lot of people.
Yeah, and people
you
are
know?
probably, again, like so scared to do or say the wrong thing
Yes.
that they can't perhaps be themselves. And sometimes that's probably for the best. But
Yeah.
I think it's confusing for both parties. And I think ultimately, of course, as a feminist and as someone who wants people to feel safe, I think everyone to feel safe, I think it's ultimately for the best. You know, we want people to be able to feel, like, obviously safe always and for consent and all of those things. So the Aziz thing was an interesting one, maybe the tipping point. But yeah, like looking into things that we've, again, just taken for granted, like these are the normal interactions that happen on a bad date. Really? Is that what we're going to accept? Is that okay? So, I don't think so. So yeah, I think I'm not surprised people are confused.
Gotcha.
I think just be a good person is probably the good. Like, don't be a shitty person. And
Yeah.
don't date jerks. So if we can just run with those things.
Have you had your fair share of dating jerks?
Of course.
Some
I mean, I
bad
wrote a
breakups?
book called Breakup Boss because, I mean, Breakup Boss is probably one of the things I'm most proud of because with all my relationship advice, everyone just gets stuck on breakups, right? It can really throw them off for a long time in their life. Like everything falls to shit when they go through a breakup. And so Breakup Boss was written, like I had the idea in 2010, didn't get it up really until 2018, I think it came out. And I did it as an app, not a book, because it was originally going to be a book, and I took back the rights because I'm like, no, the phone is where you live when you're in breakup mode. That's where you're going to stalk them. That's where you're going to drunk dial them. That's where you're going to text them. That's where you're going for advice from your friends. You're just staring at it and stalking it the whole time. So it made sense to live in there, and it's dynamic, and it works with how you're feeling.
Do you have the app on you?
Yes, of course.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You mind if we check it out?
Yeah.
Video anyways.
And then it became a book as well because it's such a good gifting opportunity. And now we have these women who just gifted around their friendship circle. Like I just felt like there was nothing in that space that would kick your ass, right? If you want to lose weight, if you want to achieve a goal, there's a coach for that. But there wasn't a breakup coach for that. And having been through my fair share of shitty breakups, I was like, I wish I had this. And now I do. And now we do. And it sends you little pep-peps every day to buoy you up. In fact, I'm probably due for mine, although
So
it'll be in
curious to know
Australian.
what this is like.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You going through a breakup?
No. I mean, I've had my fair share.
You had your fair share.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys use it even though it's hot pink, a lot of guys use it as well. Just because you are so vulnerable when you're in a breakup and you make such terrible decisions, generally speaking.
This is it, guys. What's
Yeah.
the worst breakup you've been through? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, there are different types, aren't there? There are ones where your ego is so terribly bruised and the moment is so humiliating versus the one that just drags on and on and on and on. And I think that's more heart-wrenching. But also I would say that the breakups that are preemptive, or the one that you don't know whether you should do it, or the one where you're just both nice people but it's not working, that can be the hardest. So it's not always a cheating or an anger or any, something that's got a catalyst. It can just be, I think we need to cut this off here. And they're the ones that I think people struggle with the most, because you're hurting a person. But I always say, look, first of all, breakups are a gift. Like, it's a T in the road. If you go back to your breakups, it's generally a pivot for a new part of your life. And women in particular blossom after breakups.
Yeah.
And also, if you, in that particular situation, you're allowing that person to find someone who loves them 100% and wants to be with them, because you don't. And you're stopping them from that happiness. And you're stopping yourself from being someone.
Sure.
But my latest book, Love, came out last year, and that was about women it was a compilation of my Cosmo columns, but it was also just going, date yourself for a while, be single. Like, single should be treated like limited edition. Like, it's the best. And I think when women, the way the universe sort of, sorry to be that girl, but the way that it tends to work is when you're so focused in having a great time and enjoying the singledom, it doesn't tend to last very long.
Right.
Because you're just busy getting on with life and travel and business and whatever it might be. So,
Sure.
yeah, I'm very passionate about breakups, which is very strange.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really critical moment in someone's life.
Yeah, I think you kind of understand a little bit more about yourself and what you're made of in many ways.
What you're made of. It's times of trauma that you see your true character, and further on, what you do with that. Like, you going to mope for a year, or are you going to look back and go, oh, in a year's time, I could have done this. I could have been here. That's not to say you shouldn't grieve it, of course, but it's a growth opportunity.
For sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people try to stray away from stress and feeling uncomfortable or feeling pain.
It'll get you. It'll
But
come back.
It'll come back, but you also learn a lot about yourself as well. I think you just learn. Like, I had this. I don't think I've ever shared this, but
Here we go.
so I lived in Colombia. I did like a solo travel thing for about 2 years or so, and started in Argentina, and I lived in Colombia.
Wow.
And thank God she wasn't like my girlfriend. But this is like in my 20 or 21, and I lived with 2 other people, and one of the roommates brought in this girl who was like an architect from Colombia, and we started, hooking up and stuff. And I think like a month or month and a half went by, and there was something different about her. Like, I don't know if you guys have if you have like close friends that are Latina or Latino, but they're very like mother nurturing.
Okay.
And for me, I was like really, really attracted to that. Just because I think, like, growing up in a very conservative family background, it was something that I was certainly missing, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think I personally thought that she was just doing it for me.
Oh.
And I realized that's just who she is.
Yeah.
And that's just how that culture is.
Yeah. But that's still nice.
And it's still very nice.
Yes.
Yeah. Where things fall down was I come back one point at night, and thank God she wasn't my girlfriend, but she was sleeping with my roommate.
Oh,
Yeah.
that hurts.
And we had to live together for another 30 days.
Oh, God. So that would class it as a breakup S.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was like the worst. And but you learn so much about yourself and how much you can withstand from that experience.
Yes, and you realize what you will and won't accept anymore. Like,
Yes.
probably not that anymore.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
girlfriend sleeping with your flatmate, roommate, as it were. But it allows you to create limits and boundaries. And I think sometimes my friend's like, why am I just dating dud after dud? I'm like, because you're learning. Each
Learning
relationship.
What? You're dating what?
Dud after dud, like losers
dud,
after
okay,
losers.
okay. Yeah.
I think it's just, if you can see it as like research, you're collecting information about what to look for next time and what you won't accept anymore and what the warning signs are. It's all going to help ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
It happens.
It happens,
I've heard
yeah.
worse stories, so
Yeah.
happy to share my share. Cool. Well, thank you so much for making the time to come down here, share your story.
I got to say also, not every woman that shows warmth will do that to you. It's going to be,
No.
work through that, work past that.
Absolutely. I mean, this is 6-7 years ago now, but
Doesn't matter. It can still hurt.
yeah, you learn, you grow, and you kind of just move on after a while,
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Good on you, Sean. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for making the time.
Pleasure.
We generally like to leave the audience with one small but actionable piece of advice for anything that they're trying to pursue, whether it's a business, whether it's a project that they've been holding off, a book they maybe want to write. What's something that if you kind of reflect back in your life, one maybe small or even big thing that really helped you get to that next step when you start to reflect now?
Gee.
I know you didn't have any plans.
Oh, no, I know. No, I wouldn't
yeah.
say that. That's not what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
I wish I had something really wise, but the only thing I can think of, and this, I think when it comes to honouring a project and seeing it through, it has to be, you have to make or put something into the world that you really want personally, that you want to use, and it's more than just finding a gap in the market. Because for me to be able to 6-7 years on still talk about the brand and have my passion for it and want to continue to do new things with it, I have to really love it. And I use all the products every day. And I thought I would be bored by now. But to have that, and that's the same with bloggers or people who do regular content like yourself, you have to have that passion to do it. It has to feel like you would do it even if it weren't paid. So I love that idea of like, how would this look if it were easy? But also do something that you want for yourself. Do something that you really, really want. So every book I've written, I'm like, I wish I had that book at some point. Or, I made these for my own children. And it actually sounds quite selfish and obnoxious when I put it like that. But I think it has to be something that you are genuinely passionate about. Because you won't believe your own bullshit after a while. You got to be able to stand there and feel passionate about it. And it's that passion that brings the customer in and they want to connect with that. So you have to really like it. Like what you're doing. If you don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great advice. The one thing that I took away just from having this conversation, and you've been very humble this whole time, but I think it's a very underrated skill set that you have where you kind of understood what your core competency is, which you seem to really hone that in. I think a lot of people, number one, they don't really understand exactly what it is that they can add the most value to and what they enjoy the most. You seem to have figured that out pretty quickly.
I think you get one.
You kind of get
like
one
some
or
people
two.
are very talented, but you have that one that is the thing that
Yeah.
you can do better than other people.
Yeah.
And mine's writing, and so then I just do things around that.
Sure, and it's the first thing that I noticed actually when I saw, because every
Yeah, it's
skincare
words.
is
Too many, probably.
there's a lot out there, but just seeing the copy definitely kind of gets you. But I think the second skill set that you have is understanding, because you know what you're good at, is also getting out of the way pretty early stage
Yes.
to understand that you want someone that is a CEO or GM in this case because of the size of your company. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they get stuck in trying to do everything because they want something to be perfect, or they think that they have this big ego and they want to do everything. But I think having that self-awareness in many ways that you have is actually a great skill for a lot of entrepreneurs listening. It's why your brand is taking off.
Oh,
right?
thank you, Sean. Well, that's a learned skill. Like I think at the start, and I'm definitely a micromanaging control freak, like ask anyone on the team. But it's also just going, there are people way better at this than me. Don't waste time and energy on that. I don't have time and energy to waste on warehouse and logistics and manufacturing. There are people who are really good at that. Let them do it.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Well, where can people find you? Where can people learn more about what you're up to?
Well, go to skincare.com and I'm at Zoe They Say on Instagram.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
I don't often dish out breakup advice or things on there, so don't be scared. It's not going to be a lecture. It's just fun.
Gotcha. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Awesome, guys.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah. Hey guys, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. This episode was sponsored by Shopify. Shopify is a commerce platform from everything that you need, from point of sales all the way to e-commerce, whether you want to start, grow, or scale your business. We're here at the Shopify LA office in Row, downtown LA, where they provide support for entrepreneurs 7 days a week. They also have live events with some of the top business leaders in the world. And if you guys want to learn more information, book a photo shoot, or even book a podcast studio session, come check out la.shopify.com.